Hey guys, this is Jared Callis at Alamo Audible. Welcome to episode 175 of the podcast. And we changed things up quite a little bit on this episode. We are actually joined by our friends at the Bird Podcast. That's Austin and Joed. And we had a great discussion, just kind of recapping an incredible 2021 season for UTSA. Shared some of our favorite memories, kind of talked about like the lasting legacy of this season. So it was great. Austin and Joed are students, and they have a different perspective than Adrian and I because we've been around since the first year. So to hear them share their experiences of kind of developing their UTSA fandom during the absolute depths of the Frank Wilson era was very interesting because we have a very different perspective. So it was great to chat with those guys and share our experiences from the season. And we'll play that right after the jump. But before we do that, I do want to give a shout out to all of our Patreon subscribers, including our newest subscribers, all the Insider tier. That's Kyle Stevens, Sheldon Jones, aka Sticks, and Dynasty's Nuts. Thank you to Dynasty's Nuts for signing up for Patreon. And I do want to reiterate, if you want to sign up anonymously, you can sign up as Dynasty's Nuts or whatever else you want, and that's what you'll be known as on Patreon. Of course, big thank you to all of our big money donors: Maddie Bentovar, Rick Cortez of Rowdy Road Grillers, Zach Espericueta, the San Antonio Podcast Network, and our Board of Trustees members, Digiteek, John Otwell, Lino Perez of Los Dos Rowdy's Tailgating, and Gary and Ruben representing the UTSA Bird Gang Tailgate. If you guys are a Patreon subscriber, keep in mind we got content coming all throughout the football offseason, covering other sports as well as recruiting and just in-depth analysis and breakdowns of UTSA football as well. In fact, Adrian and I recorded an episode last week where we did a full review of the UTSA senior class that has graduated in 2021, at least the guys that we anticipate moving on to two other things after this season. And that was great. I got a lot of great feedback on that episode. People enjoy doing those retrospectives, I think. And it's also a fun trip down memory lane for a lot of those players. So definitely check that one out on Patreon. As little as $5 a month will get you access to that. And without further ado, I'll go ahead and jump into our interview with the Bird Podcast. Definitely go give them a follow, a subscription on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen to your podcasts out. They've had a lot of great guests on their podcast. I really, really enjoyed their interview they had with Coach Derek Pittman, UTSA soccer coach. So highly recommend checking that one out, as well as all the other cool stuff they have going on up there. So thank you guys, and hope you're off to a great start of 2022. All right, guys, welcome to the Alamo Audible / the Bird Podcast collaborative episode. A real meeting in the minds here. I think it's the first 4-person podcast that we've done at Alamo Audible in a while. I don't know if you guys have done one, but this will be a lot of fun. I'm Jared. I'm with Alamo Audible. Been covering UTSA since the first practice, which is always fun and crazy to say. Graduated from UTSA in 2014. Got my BBA in information systems. Work in the tech industry now. Outside of Alamo Audible, I also contribute to Underdog Dynasty on the SB Nation podcast, and I'm on Twitter at JaredUTSA. If you guys want to follow me there.
Yeah, hey, what's up? This is Adrian as well with Alamo Audible. Super big hello to the Bird audience and subscribers. But yeah, I'm also on Twitter at Bermuda's Audible. Class of 2015, baby. Original Sosa member, 2011. Was there for the first game on field. Drumline, tenor squad, what up? And yeah, dude, graduated 15 on time, 4 years, 4 years, 5 football seasons. And yeah, here we are, been covering UTSA with Jared ever since graduation, pretty much.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Joed Ben Salah on Twitter at JoeFred98, JoFred98. Hello to all the Alamo Dome Audible listeners out there. Really excited to have this collab with y'all. I'm also with...
I'm Austin Donnelly at AustinKid2000 on Twitter. I'm a communications major. I'm graduating hopefully after next semester. I was in the band for my first 3 years. And yeah, I'm really excited to get going.
Joed, were you in Sosa as well?
Yeah, so I was in Sosa. Not the first year of Sosa,
Sure.
I think my first year was 7.0 Sosa. So did 4 years of that.
Nice. God, I can't believe they're still doing that. So it's like, what is it, like 12.0 so now?
I think it's
11.
No, they might have
been. No, 11 was this last season, I think. I think 12.0 is the next one.
Yeah, something like that.
Adrian's been talking about doing a Sosa podcast for a long time. I might just leave you guys to it. I'll let y'all nerd out on music stuff. Because I don't know what I'll be talking about.
I'm not prepared.
We did an episode with E. and that was a lot of fun. I have him on
Yeah,
again.
I would love to get E on an episode. He's such a profound speaker. He's so great at that. His stories are just, he's got like a treasure chest of stories, man.
Honestly.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Did you know he has a Mousker?
I did not know that.
It's Disney's version of the Oscar, but it's a Mousker. It's like,
oh, okay.
Yes, apparently.
Oh, big achievement. Carved out a big legacy. Yeah. So he hails from Disney. So it's pretty incredible that he made it to UTSA from there. And he's got a hell of a legacy himself, like building out Sosa 12 years. I mean, he's literally the only person left from like the original Romo Hickey era UTSA that's involved with like the football program. Pretty much the last guy from that era.
You're right. Yeah. Wow.
He really is. And like when you talk to him about the stories about back, because I mean, like I said, it's weird. One, I mean, he definitely has a big impact on the whole athletics in general, but like he's been there from the beginning to here, and you hear the stories about like how, like I've talked to him when it was like Frank Wilson as head coach and how things were ran until now. And it's just like, he has great stories.
Yeah, that's sick. I think I can't remember who it was. Maybe it's been you, Jared, but he was like, man, a guy gets that many kids to join the band year after year and keeps increasing year after year. He must be doing something right. Okay. And it's insane how big freaking Sosa is now.
Yeah, and they sound so good.
What did you guys play?
I played euphonium.
I played trumpet.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah, I don't even know what a euphonia is. That's why I'm punting on this discussion. I'll leave you guys to that. It'd be a great future collab, but I will keep my ignorance out of it.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, we're sitting here on January 3rd of 2022. So officially the hands down greatest year for UTSA athletically and academically has come and gone. There's a lot to be proud of, a lot to reflect on. But mostly I think we're just here to kind of recap and relive and commemorate this amazing football season that UTSA has had. Adrian and I hadn't recorded a season recap episode before this one. So this is like really our first time to kind of put into words the big picture part of it. You know, I think we got really caught up in like, you know, we're going to win this week, you know, who's going to play backup running back this week, all the minutia. But when you step back and you take that big picture look, I mean, it's hard to comprehend what has happened to this football program in the past 365 days. I was just texting Adrian and Aaron this morning, and it's like, can you believe like how long ago it feels when Texas Tech tried to hire Jeff Traylor away? That feels like years ago. And it's just been a couple months. Right. So I guess my question for you guys is, what do you think like the lasting legacy of this season will be? Like when we look back at UTSA 20, 30 years from now, and you think of this like magical 2021 season, like what's your prediction of what that kind of sentiment is going to be as far as like what this season did for the program as a whole, and maybe even for the university?
It's funny because I think most people would want to point to the championship, but I honestly feel like that might have been one of the least important things that happened this season. You know, obviously it's the championship, it's important, but I think like the when you look back on this year, yeah, you're going to say the championship, but I think a lot of people are going to say like this was where it started. And yes, it started 10 years ago, but this is where like San Antonio really got behind their city and claimed UTSA as, you know, their own team, not just a team that's playing in their city. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think like when you, let's say 10 years from now, like when we're looking back, we're going to say, this is where everything started. And hopefully, you know, it keeps going and San Antonio continues to stay behind it. But I think this is literally going to be like a turning point, and the turning point up until now that sets us up for the future.
Yeah. And this is definitely, I don't think we're not obviously all where we're going to be, where we want to be with the connection to San Antonio and all that, but it's definitely like the start, the quote High School Musical, the start of something new.
Yeah.
It really does feel like a turning point and like a important cornerstone.
This is why I'm glad we're having this collaboration, because I don't think like on the Almanac Audible we've ever quoted High School Musical before. It's great to have this cultural exchange.
Generational exchange, no doubt.
Yeah, that is true. I guess we're like, you guys are Gen Z, right?
Yes, we're like, or at least I think I'm like the start of it.
Yeah, I think all four of us are like kind of on the bubble, but obviously Adrian and I are closer to the millennial age than Gen Z. That's funny.
I'm curious to know as youthful students behind the program, Jared and I were talking about the kind of the wear and tear this season has had on the fan of UTSA football, because you got to understand, we've been so bad for so long prior to this. This year we were so good. The fan was fanning like 10 times harder than he's had to fan than we've had to fan for the past 3 years combined, and it was just incredible to experience. But I mean, dude, by the end of it, wore the hell out, right? And like I tell you, to have like December and Saturday, and there was no UTSA on or to travel to, kind of a double like bittersweet thing, right? Like I was like, oh my gosh, thank goodness, like finally it's over. It was a great season, but it really, really has exhausted, I think, a lot of the fan base. I'm curious if you guys as students, like, are you guys ready to go to another UTSA football game this Saturday? Are you guys still amped, or do you feel like the wear and tear, like, are you pretty wore out from fanning this season?
I don't know about you, but I could have taken a whole nother season after that. I don't know. I was so personally I came in 2018 was my first year at UTSA, and I'm not from San Antonio. I grew up military, so I'm not from the area. I didn't know UTSA existed till 2016, probably, when I was looking at colleges.
Wow.
And so my first football season was 2018, and I didn't really care about sports before I came here, but I joined the band because they were at the orientation, and then I kind of had to go to the football games, and then naturally it kind of sucked me in, and what a season to suck me in. So that's when I started. So really I had nowhere to go but up as a fan, honestly, from 2018. So it just feels like escalating a roller coaster, and I feel like there's still more to go, and I'm excited to see how high we can go, and I just want to keep it going,
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I personally, for me, I'm like mixed in terms of, yes, I definitely was exhausted at the end of the season. So it was nice to have, I mean, this is going to be a long break because it's not until next season starts. So it's nice to have this break. But at the same time, having that thing, like you said, is bittersweet. So when the first Saturday came that we didn't have football, it was like, this is nice. I can do whatever I want, but what do I do? You spend the whole rest of the year, knowing Saturday where I'm going to be, what I'm going to be doing. So it was nice to have the break, but I think I could have more football.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting because I think this is the first time there's really like a different, I guess like
attitude,
different like eras of fans, right? Like some people have been around since the first season, but it seems like there's a lot of people that are a little bit newer, like because the students have like become such a huge part of the fan base now, especially like recent alumni and stuff. So there's a lot of people that had never seen 30,000 people in the dome before for a UTSA game. So I think for some of the older folks like myself, like this season kind of felt a little bit like getting back to where we used to be from like a fan support perspective. Like obviously the team's never been this good on field wise, but I do think that's an interesting point for like, especially the students that have never seen or imagined that UTSA football could have a game day experience like we've seen in the Alamo Dome recently. Like, man, that must feel like super euphoric to see that for the first time. So I think that's a really cool perspective.
Yeah, I think before this season, the most attended game at the Dome I'd been to was the Baylor game, and I think that was my first game.
And those were all Baylor fans.
Yeah, like probably 12,000 Baylor fans. But, you look at the 40,000 whatever for the championship game, there were maybe 25 Western Kentucky fans in the stands, And like we've said this on our podcast before, but like I guess like the buy-in for the fans is totally different. And I know like the players and coaches have commented on it as well. Like when you look into the student section, like those are not casual fans that didn't have anything else to do on a Saturday. And like, they're just there to drink beer. Like people are like really all in on the team and like, they know the players and all that. Like it was just a very different, I think, atmosphere as far as like, the attention to the actual game. Like people just seemed like really locked in and really supportive. And it wasn't just like oh, let's go check out the UTSA game because like, what else are we going to do kind of deal? Or like also in the early years, there was like kind of curiosity of like people that have never seen college football before would go to UTSA games, like wear their Cowboys gear. And there's still a bit of that. But I think now people are just like really actually on board with like the program and have more faith in it, like sticking around and being successful long term.
Yeah, it's crazy because like it started like just the student section. It didn't like get big in the middle of the season. It was big from the jump. And like there's a lot of like factors that probably go into that. Like people are just itching to do something because like they've been in quarantine.
Right.
But I think a lot goes into like just Coach Traylor as becoming, I mean, he's not a player and he won't say this, but almost the face of the team and helping brand the team a lot better and bring this winning culture before we even started winning, you know?
Yeah, that's actually one of the questions I want to ask you guys to get your perspective from within the student section. It seems like you can't even really attribute with winning games to growing the student section because like you said, it was big from the Lamar game. And I know that like UTSA upset Illinois the week before, but it's hard to imagine that like really having a huge impact on the student attendance. I think it's a good point about Jeff Traylor having a bit of a celebrity status within San Antonio. I mean, it seems like the news loves him and, his quotes get a lot of airtime and stuff like that. But from a student perspective, what are some other factors do you think led to people maybe checking out the first game or just, dude, another thing I noticed too is people stick around for the whole game. Like they're there through the alma mater. Like,
that's what's new. That's really new. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that we've never had. Never.
When I was a student, when Jared and I were students, I mean, the student section was drained out by the end of the third quarter. No doubt.
Yeah. I mean, I would say this season, obviously there's a lot of factors that, brought students to games. I would say probably one of the biggest ones is COVID. Seeing how COVID has impacted students, having a full semester of online classes and just how horrible that was. Coming into the season, you have an entire, entire generation of students who have really barely stepped foot on campus, and now they can come on campus and they're looking for something to do. And you go to the football game. Your team is obviously, we're doing pretty good, so let's go check out the game. And I think there's also part of it is the incoming students didn't necessarily interact with the students who are already there for a couple of years. And the students who are already there was kind of an apathy towards the UTSA football because we were never that good. And I feel like that rubbed off a lot on incoming students, but you didn't see that because they were all online. They weren't interacting with each other. So now you just have this fresh group of freshmen who are making their own kind of decisions about UTSA football.
They didn't go through the orientation experience to get some D-hypes for football.
Wait, tell me more.
Yeah. Orientations, it's
a whole nother podcast.
It's orientation is not good. it honestly it's
because it was probably online for them, right?
I'm sure, because it wasn't in person. But yeah, so I think just like not having the interaction with like the apathetic fan base that already was there, and then wanting something to do, needing something to do. I think that definitely had probably the biggest impact on getting students to games, and then. Obviously winning is going to get students to games no matter what. It's going to get people to games no matter what. So coming off of last season where we did, decent, really good compared to other seasons. And then we beat Illinois. You have, Jeff Traylor, who, the media is talking about him. I think it built a lot of hype and made students want to go.
I really like that you brought up the apathetic student, right? Because there's absolutely a huge compounding effect that can happen when going to the games isn't quote unquote cool to do. Right. And we've seen that happen right up the road at Texas State. Yeah. And, they could have the best opponent in and be playing pretty decent football, even for their standards, and no one will go. And sure, that probably could never happen here at UTSA in San Antonio, but I think there was a time there we were losing so many games. It did become uncool to go to UTSA games. I had a hell of a hard time getting people to go to games. Even my friends around San Antonio and all my just recently graduated friends, we just, there was no fun to go. And I think us having that COVID year, you just kind of put into perspective for me, could have kind of been a saving grace from that sentiment of going to games not being very cool, rubbing off around campus a lot.
Maybe it's just me. I'm curious to hear your perspective as you sat in the student section. Adrian and I, our season tickets are complete opposite end of the dome from the student section. But from across the stadium, it seems to me like the football IQ of the student section has gone up tremendously. Like there are times I notice like the students like booing or cheering like kind of obscure roles and stuff. I'm like, damn, like they really know what intentional hands to the face are. Cause like when I was a student, people didn't know what the hell was going on. They were just like, I'm here for the party. And like, if we score a touchdown, that's good. And like, that's kind of was the gist of it. Is it just me or does it seem like the students are like more football aware or maybe the culture's changed a little bit?
Yeah.
So, I think a big thing. So one, I think when you looked at like the makeup of the student section, it was a lot of underclassmen, a lot of freshmen, sophomores. So
and if it weren't them, it was probably frats.
Yeah. So that I think that was a really big thing, is that it was just these fresh minds, like uncorrupted UTSA fans.
Not jaded.
Not jaded UTSA fans. So that was one thing. So there's already this hype going on. But a big thing with like the first couple of games was I don't think the IQ was necessarily there. But one of the big things was, our group being there with the student section. And then also you had a rejuvenated rowdy crew this year that actually was doing things down in the student section, like in those trenches, actually, like, we were legitimately teaching other students how to be fans and what to get mad at and what to cheer about.
Yeah, I think the first couple of games, Joe was like standing on chairs, like yelling at people. It was like a professor.
No, legitimately, like it was those first couple of games was literally just teaching the rest of the fan. The hype was there already, but it's just like knowing when to get hype and what to get hype about.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
So, dare we say Joe a yell leader?
What?
I think we need our own term for that.
Yeah, for sure. I would argue for it. I mean, and it's funny because so at UTSA, I've done a lot of stuff. So like a year ago, I guess 2 years ago, last year, Joe and I were actually like the presidents of Rowdy Crew. I think that was 2 years ago. It might've been already.
Time isn't real.
Yeah. So what happened was Rowdy Crew was, obviously this thing before, and it was a student section, got, students to games and stuff, but something had happened where one of the years the president just wasn't good and they just didn't do anything that year. And it legitimately almost decimated Rowdy Crew to the point where it's like, it just didn't exist anymore. So Joe and I were interns for athletics marketing, and they basically came to us and we were helping them rebuild it and stuff. And then they asked us to be like the presidents of it and whatever. But from that point on, Rowdy Crew became this new, like really, this season specifically, Rowdy Crew stepped it up a lot. And I think that had a really big impact on getting students to games and getting them actually like hyped and aware about games.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic because that goes back to my days on campus too. I mean, even pre-football, there was Rowdy. I think my first year on campus is when Rowdy Crew officially started, because they used to have these other groups, but then they try to make it more of an actual student organization and not just like kind of an informal kind of, like the Bad Birds are. Like you don't go sign up for Bad Birds on a website, you just show up and hang out. Yeah. And like Rowdy Crew was so up and down, and it was like 100% dependent on who the leadership was. So like there were some years like they would get a pretty good consistent turnout for basketball games and stuff, and they would throw events, and the players were involved too, which was fun. But sometimes it was just a complete train wreck. I mean, there's like no leadership at all. Like the Facebook page wouldn't get updated and stuff like that. But I think when we look back on this season, one of the things that I am going to always keep in mind is like how much like the infrastructure around the program took a big step forward. And I think you saw a bit of that in the Frank Wilson era. But with Traylor, I think it took an even bigger step, I think, because the administration was a little bit more on board. So like the fact that there were like marketing people like working for the athletics department that actually cared to reach out to Rowdy Crew, like help, give them a little bit of support and stuff like that. Yeah. That's stuff that we didn't traditionally have at UTSA because it was such a bare bones, like shoestring budget, and like the fact that like there's a little bit more cohesion between the athletics department and like the formal student organization for the student section, I think is a really good sign, and something that hopefully will be sustainable, because like I said, it's kind of been peaks and valleys, going back like over a decade now. Gosh, I feel so old saying that. But it's just something that we've always struggled with. So hopefully that can be a little bit more, consistent as the program like kind of steps into the American.
I recall my time as a student in the student section. I don't really remember too many like extremely legit bodies, student bodies or organizations that all really kind of championing how to cheer or what to do. It was just a big party down there. And I imagine, now, when you're in the student section, students are probably actually watching the game, paying attention to and focusing on the game, right? Whereas it was all very, very passive watching back in the day. So it's good to see that. Really good to see that the student base growing.
Also, Joe, let me ask you guys a question I've been meaning to ask a student for a while. How does the seating work in the student section these days? Is it a free for all, or?
It's general admission.
Yeah, it's free for all.
Okay, so I think that was one of the biggest mistakes that UTSA made from like a student section perspective when I was a student, is they were free for all for the first couple of years. And then I guess there were some changes in student affairs, and student affairs somehow talked athletics into like reserving like the best seats, like right in front couple rows for like different student organizations, fraternities and sororities and stuff. It was awful because there were these huge empty blocks where there was no one sitting, and they wouldn't let you move down because those seats were reserved for, whatever sorority or whatever.
Gosh.
It was awful. Like,
third quarter. Yeah.
It took away the incentive of showing up early, getting loud and all of that. Cause like, you could just stay out of the tailgate for 30 minutes getting drunk and like knowing that you could get a second row seat because you're in the right sorority or whatever. Like I thought that was an awful decision. So I'm glad that they're not doing that anymore.
Yeah. So I think this is kind of behind the scenes stuff that I don't think people necessarily know about. But you kind of mentioned this season, like definitely took a step forward in terms of infrastructure and how things are done. When I was an intern for marketing, like it honestly was not very well run and put together. And there was just so much like lack of communications between like departments, everything. It just was horrible. Like if I'm being completely honest, like it was terrible. Even like within just marketing itself, between like the head person there and then the next like couple people down, like the entire thing was just not very good. And I felt like, we would say so many ideas, like things like before you're right. Like they would mark out certain seats that were specifically for like Rowdy Crew or whoever it was. And then like none of those people would show up. And then, like you said, people want to take those seats. They don't let them take it. And it just was like a lot of things that just didn't necessarily make sense. And I think when we were there, we tried to like point this stuff out and tell them about it. And we were kind of in that transition period where you went from people who like didn't want to make the changes to people who do want to make those changes. And I think now we're finally kind of getting to see administration that's actually listening to students and like what should be done. And you're seeing that this year. You saw it this past season with how well things went. And hopefully it stays that way. But I mean, like within marketing and things like that, it's just, there's so much turnover. Like whoever the top person is, like it changes every year or two. So it just kind of depends on who's up there.
And yeah, I think for one of the last things we'll say for the student section, I think one like MVP almost for this season is the social media, the people who run the social media. Because those hype videos that came out before every game, specifically the video people, the videos that came out for this season were awesome.
Yeah. So this season actually, there was no, I don't know what the exact position is. I think it's like head of marketing, whatever, that person had left. And for the majority of the season, they didn't have anybody. So it was actually pretty interesting to see like Rowdy Creative. They took over a lot of the social media and stuff like that. And it was really cool to see them actually. I feel like before, like they didn't want to do things that were cool and things that were fun. And this season, it was more a little bit of a transition. I know a lot of people complained about marketing this season, but I would argue that there was actually a better job with marketing in terms of social media, because all, like you said, you had those hype videos that came out every week. You had the jersey release video, like all that stuff was really cool, and I got people engaged, and that was a huge difference.
Well, I think a lot of the complaints were about like commercials on cable and stuff like that. If you're trying to attract students and younger crowds, I would put all my eggs in the social media basket. Well, personally,
that's a big point you're hitting on too. Is I think before they weren't focused on students, and I can tell you this for a fact, they weren't focused on students. They were focused on getting, the middle-aged, homeowner that can afford to get season tickets and stuff like that to go to the games. They were not focused at students, and it was because students weren't going to games. And I think they had the wrong approach too when it came to students, because it was all like, well, it was kind of bribing them. Like, we'll give you this cool hat or this cool whatever if you come to the game, instead of focusing on the in-game experience for them. But for sure, I think this season they focused a lot more on the student.
Because remember that one time where were you with me, or was it just me and Joe, where they had us go to frats to like ask them why you don't go to the games?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And
like the team is 3-7. Like,
I think it was.
What can we do to make you guys go to games? Please come to our games.
Because it was the season. It was the season before COVID. It was 2019 season, and Joe and I had to go to whatever the frat board meeting is. I don't know. And everyone was basically like, well, like we can't get over there. We don't have it. And it sounded like a lot of excuses to not say that we're losing,
Yeah, it was.
I'm imagining you guys like walking back to your boss with a clipboard, and it's like, all right, boss, everyone's saying we're gonna have to fire Frank Wilson to get people to games. I'm just
the consensus from Greek Row. Yeah, it's fire Frank.
Yeah. A lot of what they told us was just stuff that we've been telling them.
Right.
Honestly, I remember like they would say stuff like, we want specific sections for our frat, like in the student section and stuff like that. And it was
the frats
like,
would say this.
Yeah, the frats were saying like they would want like we want Fiji to have these many seats and this whatever. And it's just like that's not
going to happen. Sorry, bud.
And that doesn't happen at the big P5 schools either. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
But now I've never understood why. Maybe that's like an East Coast like small school thing or whatever. But I mean, I have been to college football games all over the country, and the big programs, they don't reserve. Alabama doesn't reserve 100 seat section for a frat to like show up whenever they want. Like, you got to show up early if you want the seats. Like,
I was kind of offended when he said that. I was like, who do you think you are?
Exactly. Yeah.
That was a new thing this season in the first couple of games, you could kind of show up whenever you wanted and get like really good seats. But after like the third game, you had to be there at least an hour and a half before
Sosa came out. Honestly.
Yeah. Before that to like actually get a good seat, which was, it kind of sucked for us because we're used to sitting in the front. So we had that first game, we were like, shoot, all our seats are gone. But it was really cool because you have students who are showing up to the game. So obviously, this season was the best season UTSA football has ever had. So if it was turned into a movie, what would be the name of that movie?
Dude, I thought a lot about this, and like, if I'm really thinking like true Texas football movie, like cheesy Texas football movie, it's got to be Toughness.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Like a Western font. Yeah.
Yes, bro. Toughness with like the silhouette of Jeff Traylor's handlebar, like with the handlebar stash, and his freaking visor on, and that's it.
All right, I'm gonna lean into the Ted Lasso. I haven't even seen that show, but based off my understanding of the character Ted Lasso, I'm leaning into that with Jeff Traylor, and I'm making a movie called Hotter Than Fish Grease, the story of how one man, I don't know, turned around a program.
That was my answer.
So is this gonna be? So is it gonna be more of like? So is your version, Jared, instead of being more, because mine is like Friday Night Lights.
Yeah,
no. The movie, not the series. Yours is more like Necessary Roughness.
Mine's more like either like a Disney, like a radio type movie, or like a Remember the Titans, like kind of goofy.
Okay, yeah, but it still hits hard too.
Sure, yeah. I just like, that's what I've enjoyed about this team is like they don't take themselves all that seriously. Like Coach Traylor always like tweets at guys like stop having fun in practice, and I love that. I hate like hard ass coaches like, oh, football is like serious business, because like it is like to a certain extent, but like it's a game. Like you have to have fun out there.
Well, we talked about earlier, like that celebrity status, quote unquote, that kind of brought some excitement around going to the games for students and for the student body. But like, it's absolutely true. It's the charisma, right? And it's so magnetic. Everyone really buys into it, and it's easy to get behind. It's easy to be a fan of. And it's not boring. It's highly entertaining. You know, for the first 10 years of this program, we had pretty boring coach speak that happened, and now we get one-liners and quotes nonstop. Yeah, it's good content, man.
Yeah, so that was my answer.
Yeah, that was going to be ours. 150.
Oh, both of you guys?
That was my exact answer.
Really?
Before we started recording, I said, look, if we do have the same answer, we're going to have to get the trademark for it. So I'll start researching some Hollywood agents. I'll get back to you guys. This will be extremely profitable for us.
Yeah, except I was going to just have it be a 30 for 30, but
yeah, it's probably adequate. Look, I think that's the goal for the next couple of seasons is like, we're going to go from 30 status, like just one cool season, to a feature length film, right? Because you got to stack seasons to get to that point.
For sure.
Yeah, so I guess I'll go with my backup. So we're Alamo City, so I feel like we have as a school don't do this enough and like reference the Alamo in our marketing.
We do not.
Oh boy,
I love that.
I mean, if we're gonna, it could get into come and take it issue territory, so we just slowly go into it. But make them remember as the title of the movie.
Ooh, I like that.
Whoa,
that is good.
That's heavy.
So I don't know if I've ever said this publicly, but I can confirm that there's, I guess, I don't want to say a direction, but there's very much a preference from the athletics department and the administration to
disassociate,
tiptoe around Alamo. The way that I had it explained to me by someone outside of the department, but would probably know, is like it's just more potential headaches on the road, right? Which is unfortunate, but I guess I can kind of see where they're coming from that perspective. But there is like an awesome alternative athletics logo with the Alamo on it. It's like such a shame that you can't get that logo on a helmet and stuff. But
can't do on anything. Yeah. I mean, oh my gosh. And sure, that's something that's been spoken about internally, but I mean, damn, it's the whole city, man. It's the whole city. It's tough.
I definitely understand what they're saying from an administrative standpoint. In terms of like, it's a lot of headaches and just, everything that goes on with it.
PR.
PR, what they have to deal with. But like at the same time, I think you have to not be tone deaf either and realize that, it's literally the Alamo City.
Yeah. They play in the Alamo Dome.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
Like, you're in San Antonio, and at a certain point, like you need to find that balance and say, well, okay, we still need to acknowledge it. We can't just pretend like you want to be San Antonio's football team, but you don't want to acknowledge, a big part of what San Antonio is.
Well, so, the weird part is it's just the athletics department that focuses on separating itself. I mean, your damn class ring spends the night in the Alamo before you get your class ring.
That's a good point.
It's not an institutional separation. It's specifically an athletic separation. Well, that's what I can't quite wrap my head around.
I mean, Adrian, that's a really good counterpoint. I don't think that we know that though. To be honest with you guys, I don't think the athletics department sits around and thinks about these kind of issues. I think it comes from higher up. And like,
sure,
there's hypocrisy around it, sure, but I just think it's a pretty complex issue that it's hard to paint in black and white.
Yeah.
Athletics like reaches farther because it's like plastered on ESPN and all that, and like our institution, like our academic traditions, people in Colorado don't really know about.
Yeah, nobody outside of UTSA knows that the ring stays in the Alamo.
Yeah. I mean, like I hate to draw this example, but like Ole Miss with their Colonel Reb mascot that they had, like super like subvertly racist. I mean, it's pretty much a plantation owner. It's not like the athletics department at Ole Miss said like we got to get rid of this mascot. I think it came from higher up, but eventually got to the point where it was like a recruiting negative for them to have that. And like schools were recruiting negatively. I don't see that happening with the Alamo in our lifetimes, but it's like, why bring on the risk when you can just avoid it outright? So I think it's just like kind of preventatively covering their basis in that regard.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
They're playing it in safe, and it's just easier for them.
Yeah, exactly.
A question I have for y'all is, and sorry, this is one I kind of just came up with right now, but how do you think this season has impacted the mindset of the UTSA fan? Obviously, there's been impacts on, the football program itself and the impact that it's had on the university. But I think something that maybe isn't talked about enough is the impact it's had on the mind of the UTSA fan and the mindset we have and how we think about, us and UTSA football. I think it was after the Memphis game when we scored that last second field goal and won. I remember thinking, I was in my restroom, like getting ready for bed, like brushing my teeth, whatever. And I was thinking, I wonder what bowl game we're going to get. I wonder who we're going to play for the conference championship. It was like thinking these thoughts. And all of a sudden I stopped and I was like, when did I start thinking this way?
Yeah.
Just like a year ago, 2 years ago, it's like, it was always, are we going to make a bowl game? And now all of a sudden, and I couldn't even pinpoint when it started. It's when we make a bowl game, it's who we're playing, stuff like that. What impact do you think this season has had on the UTSA fans' mindset?
Well, I have some absolute takes on this. I could probably rant on this for a long time. I think we already have seen, but we will continue to see this become worse of an issue, a very spoiled, rotten fan base. I think a great example of that was all the hoopla surrounding the bowl game. Like, on one hand, you have fans like complaining that players potentially opting out of the game for whatever reason. We talked about this on a previous podcast, so I don't want to like really dive into that discussion again. But you have on one hand the exact same fan complaining that there are players that are sitting out of the bowl game. Exact same person 2 or 3 weeks previously was saying that UTSA deserves a better bowl game and that we're better than this. This is a crappy destination. This is a bad TV slot. We're not getting paid enough, yada, yada, yada. We need a bigger stadium. So it's like, how do you reconcile having both of those opinions that like UTSA is above this bowl game, but the players should not have that same opinion and that they shouldn't like also like be disappointed in the bowl game and opt out and do what's best for their future. So I really think like this is going to become a big thing like in the future where fans are not going to be very appreciative of like an 8-win season, which is really hard to do. Yeah. Especially as UTSA transitions into a more competitive conference as well. I just think like a lack of perspective of like where UTSA is at relative to the rest of college football when it comes to recruiting and infrastructure and personnel, things of that nature. And I think a lot of people are expecting a 12-win season to be consistent and repeatable and the standard. And the only team in America that does that is the Alabama Tide. Literally, these seasons do not come around sometimes ever for a lot of really, really good, strong, successful programs. So I am going to be beating the drum for many years to come that like you have to have a lot of lucky breaks to have a season like this. And we really need to make sure that we're not going to be disappointed with a 10-win season, because I do think that's going to happen. And I see a scenario where UTSA starts 0-3 next year and people just jump off a bridge. Like they're going to freak out.
I think we're in San Antonio. The only other major sports team in the city is the Spurs. And I think a lot of the people that are like new fans this season are mainly Spurs fans. And they come from a team that is used to winning, and they have their own issues with their fan base going on right now with how they're doing. And I think a lot of that translates over to us and will probably.
Yeah, I think Coach Pop really spoiled and ruined several generations of San Antonio Spurs fans. It is really hard to win at that kind of level, and that's what made him a Hall of Fame coach. But to expect that kind of success from really any franchise in any level of play is extremely difficult. So yeah, I am not looking forward to seeing all the complaints when UTSA has 7 or 8 wins next year, and people are going to say Jeff Traylor's overrated and we should stay in Conference USA where we win more, and all kinds of crazy takes should be flying around. So I don't know.
Hey, as long as they don't say that we need an on-campus stadium.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So to a degree, I agree with you, Jared. I don't think it'll be that bad. Yeah, you're gonna have the end of the spectrum, no matter what, right? But I think that'll be the lesser number of people that are getting that up in arms about small things. I think expectations, sure, though, we will be a little bit spoiled with expectations. I don't know if it'll be to the degree that we'll be upset with 10 wins. I sure as hell hope not.
Definitely extreme. Yeah.
But we will definitely be more spoiled. And I think a part of that is such a young fan base, dude, that there's just a perspective that UTSA fan doesn't have when it comes to college football and the way that this world works, that fans of other universities do, because that team has been around for 40 and 50 and 100 years and generationally grew up watching it, right? Everyone in the house watching it. There's just a lot of people that are UTSA fans, that are UTSA alumni, a lot of them didn't start watching college football until UTSA got a football team. Even then, you watched it a little bit. That was like your introduction. UTSA got a football team. I watched a little bit of college football. And then you stopped because they got really bad. Now you're starting to watch them again because they're good again. It's just a pretty uneducated college football-wise fan base. I got to be honest. And so that's a big part of it, of why that happens when it comes to our perspective.
No, just real quick, a great example to your point, Adrian. It was like I saw people on Twitter saying like, "I'm never going to spend money on a bowl game again because the players don't care." Have you ever heard like an A&M fan say that? Because A&M literally had to like back out of their bowl game because they had so many players like transfer out or like quit the team or whatever. Like you don't hear any A&M fans saying I'm not going to go to the bowl game because of this next year.
God forbid UTSA didn't play in the 2021 Frisco Bowl. Like, could you imagine? Yeah, if people were burning down Twitter because of that.
I know.
Yeah, like geez, it's a big perspective issue.
Yeah, it's kind of like you look at like a stock. And if you look at it from just like the week perspective, it looks like it's going crazy. But then when you zoom out, it's like really not doing anything. But when you zoom out, we can't zoom out because we don't have that history of like the ups and downs and stuff.
Yeah.
But that can be a positive too, though, because like we were talking about apathy earlier. That's the biggest challenge that North Texas and Texas State face is like they have been so bad to mediocre for generations. It's so hard to find that spark that turns fans into fervent supporters and just loyal diehards, right? So it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, I think this season, or I guess last season, saved UTSA football from a very, very bleak future. I talked about this when we lost to UNT and Frank Wilson's last season, when Frank Harris got hurt. And people were, saying, should we fire Frank? Should we not? And like, it just, the way it looked like it was going, I just don't think UTSA would have survived another losing season. Like if we had kept Frank and, tried it one more year or whatever, I don't think the fan base would have survived that. And then if we didn't hit it out of the ballpark with Jeff Traylor, like there's a scenario where we're in a very bad place right now. You know what I mean? Like I think it was the firing of Frank Wilson, and then obviously, getting Jeff Traylor, who is like a very good coach, as we've seen so far. Like all of that helped to put us on this different path where there's, a lot of success going on in the future that I think we managed to dodge going down a completely different, horrible path.
I think it was a perfect storm that we kind of almost accidentally between even like COVID, like as we talked about earlier, kind of like it's obviously a bad thing, but good things came from it with the disconnect between the apathetic and the new students. And then also the Spurs being mediocre now.
Yeah. And the Longhorns too.
Factors.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff this season, last season that I think really brought everything together to bring us to the point that we're at right now.
That no one could run intentionally.
The super seniors as well. I mean, that's a huge point that I don't think it's brought up enough, that UTSA was in a position where they had that many super seniors that they could bring back from an eligibility perspective, guys that were borderline where they weren't quite good enough to go get drafted in the NFL, but they were definitely good enough to be like an all-conference player in Conference USA. So UTSA was really in the right place at the right time. But, to UTSA's credit, they made that investment to pay that extra scholarship money to bring those guys back. But like, that's something that will never happen again. Right. So it's great that UTSA got lucky and they benefited from it, but also like we have to keep in mind that it's not going to happen again, right? Like we're going to find other avenues that give us an advantage over other programs and maximize those.
Mm-hmm. So with all the great moments that happened from 2021 UTSA football, winning the championship, if you could pinpoint, a single favorite moment from the season, maybe it's off the field, but what was your favorite moment from this year?
So
it can't be Oscar Cardenas's catch to win a game against UAB.
Yeah, that would be way too easy of an answer because I think that would probably be all of ours. Personally, for me, I think it was the first game. Who did we play the
Illinois?
first game? No, first home game. Was that Lamar?
Lamar.
Yeah. Going out of like the tunnel from the concourse and just seeing how big the student section was the first game. I think that just like looking around. And then when we got a touchdown, feeling the need to cover my ears because it was so loud. Yeah. I think that was probably my favorite moment personally.
I mean, for me, there's obviously a lot of moments this season. There's, obviously the win against the Oscar Cardenas catch that, we're not going to say, the field goal against Memphis to win it. The win against Illinois, the championship. But I think I pinned it down to two moments. One is the first game against Western Kentucky, the interception to put them away at the end of the game, which is kind of funny because, and the reason I think it had so much of an impact on me was I had a dream going into that game that we lost by 1 point. And the way it was set up, I forgot the exact score, was if they had scored that touchdown, they were going to win it by 1 point, and they were driving down the field. And I legitimately could not watch the screen because I was like, oh my God, my dream is about to come true. Like we're about to lose and it's going to be by 1 point.
But also you could see the future. So, hey,
oh my God. But then, Clarence Hicks gets that diving interception that saves the game. So I think that was one of my favorite moments. And then the second thing would be, which game was it that we had that the light tradition started?
That was
the conference championship, I think.
So yeah. So it was that game. The light started and it was just completely organic, and just to see that, the game that we're having is a championship game, and I looked around and I just saw people who have been at games, from the past seasons and have sat through all those losing seasons. And I looked around and I saw them like just happy and taking in this season that we're having. And then I saw kids on their dad's shoulders staring down at the field, watching the team, seeing these lights and stuff. And like, just realizing that this moment right here, this 1 second right here, how many, lifetime fans are created in that 1 second, And I feel like we've had a lot of those moments this season where it's just like, there's just been so many fans, lifetime fans that have been created. But in that moment, I kind of just had a chance to take it all in and realize how special it was, and what was happening this season. And that would probably be my favorite moment.
That's well said. All of my picks have been taken already, so I'm gonna ad lib here and throw out another one. It felt really good to just absolutely dunk on Texas Tech. Man,
huge.
Like in my personal life, I've had many instances where Tech alums and Tech fans have just belittled UTSA to my face. I mean, like Texas Tech's a pretty insecure fan base. I think for good reason, right? Like they've never gotten the respect they deserve. They've always been, third fiddle in their conference at best. So for them to, just have UTSA like essentially make them their daddy a little bit, like that was a really big moment for UTSA, seeing the dollar amount on that contract is like when I knew, like, even if and when Coach Traylor leaves, like, this administration is just locked in on football, right? Like, you don't throw around that kind of money if you're not going to continue doing that. You don't do that for one coach. You know what I'm saying? Like, you do that for the entirety of the program, holistically. So, like, to see stuff like, like additional player personnel people are going to be included in the contract, and extra money for recruiting budget, like all those other small pieces, like, man, that's like, for me, that's when UTSA really stepped up to the big boys table. Like, they had been incrementally making steps to get to like a decent G5 competitive landscape, or like they have all the things that you need to succeed. Obviously race opening up this year was a big part of that, but that contract, that was like, I took that contract and like what that's going to look like, and I went and compared it to like UCF and Memphis and Houston. And I'm like, dude, we're about to be like right there in the NIS with those kind of programs. So that was huge for me, just like from a more of a long-term standpoint, right? Like, that's when, Dr. Campos and Dr. Amy like really showed their commitment to, not just having a good football team and having something that we can be proud of, but like really having that competitive spirit to say, look, like, we're going to go toe to toe with any program out there. And like, we really believe that there's no limit to what UTSA can become. And I thought that was like a really like lasting achievement that might get lost a little bit in the noise of like, as this program continues to progress and do great things and do bad things as well. But I thought it was just a cool moment and a snapshot in time of like where UTSA is at and where they're hopefully going to go.
Yeah, that was amazing. That was an amazing moment. And I think one thing that wasn't even mentioned was the move to AAC amongst all these moments that have been talked about. So it's just like the list of incredible stuff that has happened to this program this year. It's never ending. It's incredible. Southern Miss game, probably no one's favorite moment. That game was on my birthday. And I think that was the game where like the Alamo Dome really just exploded. We caused something like 8 false starts on Southern, some ridiculous number. And the delay of games, the false starts, the bad snaps. The PA announcer in the press box was coaching up the crowd to get extremely loud. It was an awesome game watching experience, and the Dome got that was the first time that I'd heard the Dome as loud as I used to hear the Dome. That was a pretty special moment for me, and I really appreciate you bringing up the coming out of the tunnel and seeing the concourse, because I hold that same view in my own eyes. Whenever I came out for that first game in 2011, I know exactly what you're talking about. When you come out of the tunnel and you see how many people are in the stands, it's pretty awe-inspiring. It gives you chills before the pregame. So yeah, I know exactly like that perspective that you're talking about. And I kind of had a flashback when you were describing it. It's pretty cool.
Because I wasn't in Sosa this season, but I could only imagine being like in like Mary's shoes and just coming out because she I think her freshman year was the same year my freshman year was. So she started in 2018 too. And then just coming out the first game of the season to that after seasons of coming out to an empty stadium for pregame. Right. Oh my God. Like, on one hand, I'm glad, like I had fun. I tailgated and I had a lot of fun. But on the other hand, I'm like, oh, Sosa would have been different this season. And I don't know about you guys, but this is kind of a side note. I personally like felt like the division game. This may not be more of a hot take as I think it is, but the division game was more meaningful than the championship game for me.
Are you talking about the UAP game?
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, like, I think a lot of people, you could argue that with a lot of people.
I cried during the division game. I did not cry during the championship game.
Yeah.
Like that. I think once it's like that catch happened and I was like, oh, we're winning the championship. And then the rest of the week, I was like, okay, we're winning.
I think too, it was like that UAB game, that was like the first chance for UTSA to truly do something they'd never done before. Either win a bowl game, win a conference championship, or even just compete in a conference championship. So maybe that's why that game felt so monumental, because it was like, if we win this one, like no matter what happens the rest of the season, for sure, successful season, right? I guess that was the 11th win, I think it was. So that part alone was huge, but also just like to know like, okay, we're going to get this like one last like nationally televised game. And we knew that it was going to be at home in the Alamo Dome. So yeah, I mean, I think it makes total sense. I think I had a little bit more nerves going into the Western Kentucky game just because I thought it was a bad matchup for UTSA, like from an on-field perspective. But man, that was a magical game, that UAB game. Like there was just something in the air that made that ball float directly into Oscar's hands. Like for him to tip like that, I don't know, man. It was something wild for sure.
Yeah, and I think it probably had a little more to do with me caring a little more about UAB than WKU as like a rival. And like, I don't know, I'm not really a technical, know all the X's and O's. So like blissful ignorance going into the WKU game. I know that we beat them before, so we could do it again.
Right. Exactly. So one thing that Adrian and I like to do at the end of every season is kind of give out like some season superlatives, right? So I've got a few listed out. We can spend as much or as little time on these as you guys want. I think some of them are kind of obvious, probably. But to start off with, keep in mind, we're gonna have a team MVP as well. But just from an offensive standpoint, who do you guys have as your offensive MVP for the season?
So I think most people would say either Frank or Sincere. I think those are the most obvious. However, I would argue, and this isn't even to be like contrarian or anything, I honestly think it would be Zakari. And the reason being is that Frank obviously is, quarterback, so everything runs through him. But Sincere Zakari just had so many moments that legitimately changed games. Mm-hmm. And he was just he was just always on it, like Frank could just always trust that he can throw to him. And Zakari was going to make some stupid catch, like he like if it's going to Zakari, it's a catch,
Yeah. He'll somehow literally be parallel with the turf and still down the ball. It's crazy.
Ridiculous. And I think to be able to to rely on somebody like that. And yes, we had other receivers, JT Clark and Cephas, and then we had, Cardenas and, but Zakari, I think legitimately had more of an impact on the games than I would say Frank and Sincere. And that's probably a little controversial, but I think with Sincere, obviously, All-American, but I was pretty confident in Brendan Brady and, kind of the rest of the running back room. I just think Zakari was just in a league of his own, compared to anybody else at his position on the team, there wasn't anybody I could argue that could do the same thing that he could do. Even with Frank, obviously Frank had an amazing season, but if Frank went down, I was still kind of comfortable with having, one of those backups in. If Zakari was just down for the season, I think it would have had a more of an impact than losing any of those other two players.
I think Zakari is a fair pick for sure. When you talk about impactful moments, game-changing moments, per touch impact value, Zakari probably has the highest of that per average. Yeah.
Great blocker too.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Played most of the season hurt. I don't know if people know that, but he was banged up most of the
year.
That's
right. Yeah. I think it's a very fair MVP pick.
I'm going to go with Sincere McCormick. I'm picking Sincere 100% because Frank's my team MVP, overall. But I think on one hand, maybe Sincere didn't have kind of those jaw dropping games that he had last season. Well, I guess we could say 2 seasons ago now, since we're in the postseason. But I really think that defenses had a certain level of respect for him that we've never seen opposing defenses ever give a UTSA running back before. And I think that's a big reason why Zakari and Frank and all the receivers were able to have these really impressive seasons they did, because they were in favorable positions schematically, right? You saw very, very few teams play with safeties outside of the tackle box. I think the Rice game is a great example. Rice really played with 2 high safeties to take away the passing game for UTSA, and then Sincere had his best game of the season, right? So I think he's got to be the offensive MVP, with the caveat that Frank is going to be the team MVP overall for me.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, yeah, I mean, for I'm in the same boat. For Frank Harris is my MVP of the whole team, and really of the offense too. But just to kind of change it up and bring something different. Oh, really? I don't want to pick anyone that you guys have already picked. So let me just kind of go out of left field and maybe give someone some recognition that deserves it. How about Spencer Buford?
Yes, sir.
As an offensive MVP.
Dude,
And,
he gave up that sack in the San Diego State game. And I remember just feeling a sense of shock that like he gave up a sack like that. Like, not that he hasn't given up a sack all season. Just, it was like a super easy one. Like where he just like, he had the wrong read or he fell over or something like that. But then like 30, maybe even like 5 seconds after feeling that way, I was like, wow, can you believe how spoiled we are that we have a 4-star left tackle? And like when he gives up a sack, it feels like this shocking event because from like most of my time as a UTSA fan, like that's just how we live life, baby. It's like at any given moment in time, the left tackle could just let a guy come free on the rush and the quarterback's going to get drilled. So I think Spencer definitely deserves recognition.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Consistent all year long. House.
Yeah, I honestly think that's definitely like a valid pick, like not in terms of just getting him recognition. He definitely was. And I think it's some people don't look at the offensive line. You know what I mean? Like the casual fan, they don't pay attention to what they're doing down there in the trenches. But I think he's definitely a very valid option for offensive MVP.
Yeah, I think he's going to surprise people come draft season as well.
Oh yeah.
Moving on to defensive MVP. Who do you guys got here?
I think this one is more clear cut, obviously, than offensive. And I have to go with Hicks.
Same.
You know, obviously, I mean, you have like Tariq, who, you know, was great when he was on the field, obviously. But just Hicks just had, I mean, he should have been Defensive Player of the Year.
I agree. No one stopped him. No one stopped him all year long.
Yeah. Hicks all day. Yeah.
Well, I guess we can pick our runner up. It's
gotta be Tariq.
Tariq? I think Datron Taylor is worthy of
Datron Taylor. Not Lorenzo. Lorenzo could not be maybe honorable mention.
Yeah, I think honorable mention sounds good.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, so is anyone not picking Frank Harris for team MVP?
No, I would pick Frank for team.
Yeah,
Frank Harris.
Okay.
All team Frank.
Okay, so we're in agreement on that one. What about most improved player? So it has to be a player that was on the roster last year, but made a big jump forward in 2021.
So mine is actually going to be Frank Harris.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I love that pick. I was thinking about that pick. I love that pick.
Because and we've talked about this so much, like between my friends, and he just took a step this season. And I think previously, there was argument to be made that somebody else should have been starting over him in past seasons. This season, it was just completely different Frank.
He had like a spark to him. He had the fire under him.
And his biggest thing, I think he just took a huge step in terms of like maturity.
Yes.
And decision making. Before, like, he's always had the talent, you know, like you knew what he could do, but it was just the decision making that necessarily wasn't there. And he would throw, you know, like you'd make a throw and you're like, what would possess you to do that? Like there's just certain decisions you're just like, that's obviously not the right decision. But this season, like, I think his biggest attribute this season was that he didn't lose you games. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't going to be the person that's going to cause you to lose a game. He always made the right decision. And he always kept you in the game or won you the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great pick. Great pick.
Yeah, I love that pick. And just the intangibles, leadership wise, captain wise, and then consider this. He throws for 90 more yards per game from 2020 to 2021, 135 to 225. Last year, he was 12 touchdowns for 6 interceptions. This year, 27 touchdowns to 6 interceptions.
Do you have his completion percentages?
Yeah, 65.9% this year. And 63.6 last year.
Okay, solid improvement.
And then about 1,500 yards more on the total passing yards.
Yeah, I feel like he's come so far as a passer. Even go back to his high school days, you know, like I was always a little bit more optimistic about his chances of playing quarterback at the next level than I think most people that I talk to. But I never imagined him throwing for this many yards and having the ball placement that he does is just super impressive.
I also think that he definitely benefited from having a great receiving core this season. I mean, Zakari single-handedly himself increased his completion percentage, by making those stupid catches.
Yeah, those 50-50 balls were like 75% balls. They were 75 balls. Yeah.
I'm gonna go Oscar Cardenas as my most improved player. Yeah. And I think he's one of those guys where it's always been there, but this year he really was able to blossom and flourish, and his couple of catches that he would make in, week out were always pivotal, impactful catches, big time. And he's really kind of assumed the role as primary tight end for this offense now. Oscar Cardenas, baby.
I like it.
Yeah, I think that's really good. It's funny because I think since David Morgan, we haven't had that tight end that you can really rely on as a pass catcher. Like it just hadn't been there.
For sure.
And having him this season has been a huge impact. And I love Leroy, and he is a great tight end, and he has an impact on the game, especially in blocking. But I just don't think his hands were all there like Oscar's were. And so it's really nice to be able to rely on a pass catching tight end.
There's like 5 or 6 guys I could pick and feel pretty good about, but I'm going to go with Tariq Woolen. His journey coming out of high school has been really phenomenal. I mean, we'll see what happens when it comes to the draft, but I mean, most mocks I'm looking at have him like 2nd or 3rd round, which is unbelievable. Cause he was like an average, I guess, receiver, coming out of high school. The potential was there, and that's why he was recruited to play at the next level. But he finally put it all together this season, from the speed, the length, to then the technique, the anticipation. I don't think that he gets enough credit for how technically sound he is as a cornerback, because you see the size and the speed and it's super evident. But a lot of the pass breakups that he had, like getting his hands into the ball, like once the receiver has started the process of the catch, he's come such a long way. And obviously the coaches deserve a lot of credit for that, but I think also him individually, he seems to have such a great mindset of development and, taking his craft seriously and all that. So even though he was already good last year, I think that he stepped into like that elite category this season. It's a shame we didn't get a full season of him due to injury, but he's going to be my pick just because, he went from good to great, and you don't see guys do that all that often.
Yeah, he definitely, like you said, his journey has been ridiculous. And a lot of times when players switch from, offense to defense, the biggest issue is IQ, going from offensive mindset to defensive mindset. But I think that was his biggest thing in his transition, was he had the IQ, the defensive IQ to know, or just have the feel for where to be. And, it was apparent on the field.
Yeah, and a lot of times when guys make that transition, specifically from receiver to cornerback, they get a lot of questions about their physicality. Do they like to hit? Like, are they going to be a heat-seeking missile? And then I think back to that game that he started for the first time against Texas State last season. Like, I think like the second quarter, he came on a corner blitz and just destroyed the quarterback. So it's like that question was answered like right off the bat. So it's just really cool to see him embrace that change, because a lot of guys, they would have transferred out. They would have gone to found a place that they could start a receiver and, just do their thing. But, Woolen listened to his coaches, he listened to his people, and now he's going to become a millionaire. So yeah, really cool to see.
Moving on to the next one for most underrated player. I think personally, I don't know if he's the most underrated to me, but I definitely think he is one of he's overlooked compared to who is before him. Brendan Brady. Sincere he's the all-star of the team. He gets all the eyes, gets all the people talking about him. But when they put Brendan Brady in, no one needed to worry about anything, because we know he can hold his own water. And that one trick play, was it the championship game? Where Frank passed it over to Brendan Brady, and then Brendan Brady launched it down the field. Was that the championship game?
Well, he did it. He did it once in Memphis, and he did it once in the championship game as well.
Okay, I remember the championship game one, because my girlfriend went to the bathroom, and then that happened, and then she got back. I was like, "Steph, you didn't know what you just missed." That would be in my list of favorite moments too from the season. But I think it's definitely going to hurt us losing him. And I think because of Sincere, I don't think he gets as much talked about.
Mm-hmm. I like that pick. I actually kind of have the same sort of criteria. Probably not the most underrated, but I'll go underappreciated because he gets overlooked because of who's in front of him. My man, Joshua Cephas. Incredible hands, and I know he gets a lot of run, but I just think he was such a critical X factor as a target for Frank Harris, getting open. In addition to Sakari Franklin, he is my dude. I have a personal fandom for Joshua Cephas because we hail from the same area. So yeah, I just feel like I should have seen his name on my TL a little bit more often than I did. I felt like I was the one that always had to put his name on other people's TL. So Joshua Cephas for me.
Dude, there's definitely an argument to be made that if it weren't for Zakari and I guess Clark, like Cephas was open and shut, like the best receiver UTSA's ever had.
No doubt.
He did really good last season, right?
Yeah.
He was amazing last season.
And to Adrian's point, he also had a position change this year because he moved from the outside receiver to the slot.
The slot.
And it's not that that's like moving from receiver to cornerback, but it is a different terminology a little bit. I mean, like a lot of programs have different coaches for inside receivers versus outside receivers, different route combinations and stuff like that, different reads. So yeah, I think Stevens is a major underappreciated player on this offense. And I think, unfortunately, that might be continue to be the case next year because it looks like all of what do they call themselves, the bomb squad boys or whatever. It looks like they're all coming back.
Yeah.
But yeah, Cephas he's definitely going to have his time to shine at some point for sure.
Definitely.
For mine, and I kind of struggle with this one because I feel like he isn't necessarily underrated because I think he does get recognition. His name is out there, but I still don't think it's enough. And I think the fact that we didn't even mention him when we were talking about offensive MVP, which I guess it would be more special teams, but it's still offense, would be Hunter Duplessis. I think the fact that we have such a great kicker, and when you can rely and know that you have that, and like you can, it completely, I think it frees you. Because when you're going down the field, like, okay, at the very least, we're going to be able to get 3 points. I can trust my kicker, to get me those points guaranteed, almost guaranteed. So I would put him as my most underrated player.
Mm-hmm. Definitely going to be a guy that UTC fans are going to miss a lot more than they expect.
Yeah.
Big time. We've gotten spoiled with Hunter.
Right. Okay, I'm going to say that you guys like had some really easy picks here, and I'm a little disappointed. Right, I'm gonna keep it honest with you guys. Come on now, like let's get some hipster picks in here. I'm going with Jalen Galmore, super senior reserve offensive tackle.
Love it.
I don't know if he started any games this year. He came into a lot of games where UTSA had an injury, and he was just such a solidifying presence on the offensive line that there was not much drop off. Like if Mekhi Hart came out of the game, or if they had to do some shuffling around because one of the guards came out, Galmore was usually the guy that went in. It's kind of like that's, sixth man of the offensive line or whatever. He was great. I mean, you go back to, I guess it was 3 years ago. He was injured 2 years in a row, but when he first came in as a sophomore at JUCO, like he looked like he could be a future NFL draft pick. And unfortunately, his career got derailed a little bit due to those injuries, but he was great this year. And with the number of injuries that UTC had on the offensive line, there's no way that they win 12 games this year without Galmore and some of those other reserve guys on the offensive line just like really standing up and having huge contributions. So that's your Jared hipster football pick of the week. Thank you. I'll be here all week. Thank you guys.
Thank you. That was great. Yeah,
definitely a really good pick.
Well, let's move on to best underclassmen. I think this is a really interesting one because it's pretty wide open. I think Oscar is probably the front runner here.
Of course.
But there's some interesting guys you could pick, and it's not as open or shut as I think it is in most seasons where there's like some hotshot freshman that comes in like right off the bat.
No, I think there's a couple of names that you have to choose from here. And most of them come to mind defensively for me. I don't really know where your head's at, Jared. I'm really, really curious to hear. Can you break the ice on this one?
Sure. There's a couple of guys that I want to pick. If I had to pick, I'll pick Oscar, but I don't like to do the easy answer, right?
Yeah.
Me. So I'm going to go with Brandon Brown, redshirt freshman. Yeah, transfer from Tulane. He kind of came on late. I think that we mentioned this on a podcast. He had quit the team for a while earlier in the season. He came back, and man, glad he did, because he is looking like a guy that's going to play at the next level. He had some game-changing plays at nose tackle, which you don't really see too much of outside of like Vince Wilfork and guys like that. So for him to be that young and that explosive, he's got a super bright future ahead of him. And I think that he's a guy that he looks like a P5 talent out there. So for him to come to UTSA via the transfer portal, it's a good find by the coaching staff. And I think it also goes to show that like recruiting is not just like you recruit a guy from his junior year to senior year and you sign him. A lot of times it's a multi-year deal. And the fact that UTSA had this like long-standing relationship with him, even after he was at Tulane, when he wasn't happy there and he put his name in the portal, he already had that like established relationship with the coaching staff. So, it was an easy decision for him to come to UTSA. So definitely my pick. And I can't wait to see how he develops moving forward.
I think overall output wise, and this includes redshirt, right? I mean, redshirt counts under.
Yeah, as long as they're not a junior or senior.
Yeah, redshirt sophomore. Okay, yeah. Sure. So Ken Robinson's my pick, just output wise. Yeah, he was all over the place. And really, that was cornerback position was something that was kind of a head scratcher going into the season. I think he did a really good job of sort of holding that spot down, that position down. So Ken Robinson. But there's a few other names I think you could talk about on the defense. Maybe Jamal Egon, maybe Christian Clayton's name. You could throw those in the mix too. And then I don't know, Jared, how do you feel about someone tossing Demetrius Allen's name in there?
Oh, I think a lot of the same things I said about Galmore, you could say about Allen as well.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, Ken Robinson will be my pick.
I like that one.
Yeah, so I think I would have gone with Oscar first, and then I had Brandon Brown on my list, and then the guy that I'm going to go with is Jamal Ligon. I think him being in the inside linebacker position really helped the team with all his tackles that he had this season. He's my best underclassman.
And you talk about cornerback being a position we were worried about. Linebacker was really what we were worried about going into the preseason.
Oh, yeah, that's very true. Especially that Juka kid transfer too. Noah Mitchell. I was about to hit the panic button when that happened. I was super concerned. I think one guy that didn't get mentioned that probably worthy of a nomination, Dan Dishman had a great
Dan Dishman. Yeah, you tossed that into the mix.
Look, okay, that first record game, the hit he took was an illegal hit. That should have been a 15-yard penalty, right? But if they didn't, have a low blow and he catches that ball, one of the best plays we've ever seen from a UTSA tight end, honestly, if he comes down with that one. All due respect to David Morgan and all the crazy stuff that he did. But I mean, that catch from Dan would have been a top 5. It's like, I look at him and I see a guy that's like still growing and developing. Like if he can put on another 10, 15 pounds, oh my gosh, he could be such a huge threat in the passing game. So I'm really excited to see him come further along. And it's a guy that I didn't have like super high expectations for him coming out of high school. So it's cool to see him like make such a big impact so early in his career.
Yeah, I definitely think he has high potential. I'm just glad he survived the season.
Seriously. All right. The last superlative I want to give out. I don't know if we've ever done this before, but this is such a fun team. And like, it's so easy to review these guys. I threw this one on here, but who's like your fan favorite pick? Like not necessarily best player or like most fun to watch on the field, but just like the guy that you root for the most and you just enjoy following them.
Okay. I see what this is now. Yeah. I thought you meant like the most popular player and I couldn't really pinpoint it, but yeah, who's your guy? Well, yeah.
Like you were talking about Josh Cephas earlier and how you have a personal fandom.
He's 1,000% my guy. Yeah. That's my guy. Yeah, no doubt.
I think this is going to be an easy one for me because we've already been talking about him a lot and we've already given an award to him, but just fun to watch for me because it's funny because before this season, like we were not great and I didn't know a lot of the players on the team, like by name and stuff, because we were in Sosa. I was worried about what I was doing, and also we weren't like that great, so someone would miss a catch. I'm not going to Google to see who that person's name is, but just like some of the coolest plays that I've seen from this season, I think it would just have to be Zakari. Just like he as a person who's been getting into football the past few years, it's an easy person to latch onto and go, yeah, that guy that's like is a badass. I'm like,
yeah, no, I definitely think that Zakari this season, we definitely got a lot of casual fans that, became UTSA fans. And I think Zakari definitely helped cement a lot of people's fandom in UTSA, because who doesn't like watching like these stupid trick catches, like that gets the most casual fan, even the most casual football watching person is going to enjoy that and have a great time at a game when they see that almost every game.
It's like watching Steph Curry. Like,
yeah, it's a good analogy.
It's a one-to-one analogy.
Yeah. Dude, the guy came up with his own hand sign. Like, how baller is that, dude?
Right?
Yes.
When he throws that up.
Branding.
That is hype.
Did he get any like NIL deal?
I don't think so. No, I was considering that earlier today. It's like, that's actually interesting.
That's definitely a question I want to ask after we finish this real quick. Is just a little bit about NIL deals, but I think my fan favorite would definitely Zakari's there, but I think mine would be Leroy. He just like his personality, especially when you're on Twitter and stuff, and you see all the videos of him, and then he has his whole. Just him himself, like I don't know if you saw like that piece on him where he's like he plays piano and he sings and he has his whole like cooking thing and just everything about him. He's like fun, and he's like super cool to follow and to see on the team, and that's my guy. Yeah,
he's like a real Renaissance man.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep it country with mine. I don't know if you guys know, I'm from a small town called Victoria, Texas, and I have family in Shiner, Texas. In fact, my great-grandparents are buried across the river from the Shiner Brewery. So I've got a real soft spot for Dadrian Taylor, and I love him because he is just like a spitting image of like so many dudes I grew up with, just like kind of that South Texas, like, good old country boy kind of demeanor, and just like loves football, man, like really gives it his all on the field. And he's a damn good outside linebacker. He's just like flies all over the field, makes huge plays. And then I love the aspect of like him having his younger brother on the team as well, especially because they admit that they didn't have a very good relationship before they got to UTSA. And like, I love the honesty on that. I think it's a super interesting, like kind of subplot. But man, anytime Dadrian makes a play, I'm just like, oh, let's go, baby. Shiner, Texas, 361, represent. It's like having those like regional connections to me has always been like a really point of pride for me, and being a UTSA fan. That like people from the area that I grew up with always like seem to go to UTSA and do really well. Like, I don't know, it just like adds a cool little aspect to being a UTSA alumnus.
No, I definitely understand that. I mean, I'm essentially from San Antonio, right outside like Helotes, Texas. But if one of the guys I went to high school with was like a star at UTSA, I would like feel so much pride in that.
Yeah, exactly.
The real H-town.
Oh boy. All right, gotta go, guys.
Okay, I have just a quick question. Since we kind of covered all the superlatives, what do you think, or who do you think are going to be like the next big NIL deal getters for next season? Sincere's gone. Who do you? Because he was like the poster child for NIL deals at UTSA. Who do you think is going to be like maybe next like top 3, top 5 people to get NIL deals?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I definitely think Frank and Rashad are just going to kind of take it to the next level as far as like their exposure within the San Antonio community and their ability to, just kind of grab some extra revenue off their name and image. And like, they're so like entrenched in the San Antonio, like football community and all that. But my pick for a guy that's really going to blow up, Zakari definitely make an argument for it, but I actually think JT Clark is the guy that's like most likely to get drafted out of the rest of the roster. Like, I think he's got a super, super high ceiling. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him start picking up a lot of attention. And he's pretty good on social media too. Like, he's had some really like good TikToks that I've seen get posted. So he seems like a really like sharp and like intelligent guy. I think that like really helps too with like garnering NIL exposure, because like you kind of have to know how to navigate those waters a little bit, so to speak. So I definitely see JT being a guy that starts, having his name out there a little bit more.
I think Oscar could probably be a good one too, just for like being from San Antonio and being like branded like that.
Yeah, on the come up.
Dude, you know how Sincere had that like dental spot sponsor him? Like, Oscar has a great smile. Oscar's a local guy.
Yeah.
They just need to move that money over from Sincere once he starts getting his NFL paychecks and give it to Oscar, because he's got a beaming smile.
Yeah, that's
Good, yeah,
the point,
that's true. Good smile on him.
Oh man, I'm your new resident NIL smile evaluator for UTSA. So if any dentists out there are listening, hit me up. I'll give you the full analysis.
You'll rank the whole roster from best smile to worst smile.
Yeah, I definitely I think Zakari is the next guy to have the big NIL deals. Just I mean like like Austin said, Steph Curry of catching passes. Like he's just everybody's seen it. I don't know too much about his personality and how outgoing he is, so that could maybe have an impact on.
Exactly he seems a little quiet. I think.
Yeah, he definitely.
At least with the media.
Quiet. Yeah. So I don't necessarily know how that would go with getting NIL deals, but I think he's definitely the next guy up, just in terms of just the impact he's having.
Sheer ability and how good he is.
Yeah. Can I say though, don't sleep on Eddie Marburger.
I was gonna say that. Yeah,
for sure, dude.
No,
even if he doesn't start, man.
Yeah, our camp big ELM fans.
Those RGV people they're different, dude. They will support any Valley player to the ends of the earth, man. Like I get DMs all the time from like random people from the Valley, and they're like, "Hey, when is Eddie Lee gonna start?" I'm like, "Not anytime soon." I'm sorry, like I don't know.
Yeah, no, I definitely think he's on the radar for, especially once he becomes the guy. I think he's gonna. I think he'll be the person that like just completely surpasses everybody else in terms of NIL deals.
Yeah, I could definitely see that for sure. All right, guys. Well, I think we can go ahead and wrap it up. Anything else you guys want to hit on before we get out of here? I know we've been running for a while, but
I think we got all the topics that we wanted to.
Yeah, I think we hit on some killer stuff.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot of fun. It was great getting to know you guys better as well. And I hope if you're a listener of the Bird podcast, you'll also check us out at Alabama Audible. We're on all major podcast platforms, including YouTube now. So just search us wherever you get your podcast. And our Twitter account is at Alamo Audible. So thank you guys for listening.
Yeah, and vice versa. If you guys are Alamo Audible fans, we're the Bird podcast at the Bird podcast on Twitter. We're pretty much... We have an Instagram. We need to start working on that a little more. But yeah, Twitter's our main thing. Find us there.
We're finally on pretty much any platform you can find podcasts. You can find us pretty much anywhere.
We're off SoundCloud now. I mean, we're still on it, but we've upgraded.
Excellent. Yeah, well, we actually started on SoundCloud as well. So you guys are on the right trajectory for sure.
Nice. Yeah, that's right.
All right. Well, cool. Thanks again, guys. And we'll see you guys back, I guess, next week, next month. I don't know, whatever our respective podcasts we'll record. So thank you all for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed it.
Talk to you guys later.